Kia ora everyone, and welcome back to the Timbray Theatre Company interviews. My name's Madeleine Lynch, and today I'm joined by Nicola Owens from Audio Described Aotearoa. Thank you for joining us, Nicola.
Kia ora.
So my first question is to ask you, what do you actually do? What is audio describing?
So audio describing is basically describing the visual elements of anything in the world to blind people. And so most of the work that I do is live theatre or ballet, dance, opera, but we also describe things like guided tours, galleries, museums, and I've done things like PowerPoint presentations and floor plans and anything that's visual that needs to be described. I'm more than happy to describe it. So that's what an audio describer does. There's a very nice little phrase that an audio describer, Joel Schneider from the US, describes it as making the visual verbal, which is quite a distinct way of putting it. So yeah, putting pictures into words.
Right. And so is this a full-time job for you?
It is my job. It's not full-time, but it is my job. And it's increasing. You know, it's really great to see in Aotearoa that more and more companies and organisations are taking it on. So it's certainly been increasing over the years since we set up the company.
And how did you get involved in it? Are you from a performing background, or are you from a teaching background?
Oh, a little bit of performing in my dim and distant past. I used to be a drama student, and I was involved in youth theatre and stuff back in the UK. But I more got involved in it through my involvement with disability. I trained in the UK after I did a degree in linguistics, and then I trained with Guide Dogs for the Blind to be a rehab worker for blind people. And I heard about audio description then. It was just kind of beginning to grow in the UK then. And I was like, that would be a great job. But I didn't manage to get into it. And then I came to New Zealand. And in 2011, Auckland Live set up training for the first 6 professional audio describers in New Zealand. And they picked me as one of them. So it was really exciting. So yeah, so I trained in 2011 with Auckland Live, and that's really where it started for me. My partner's blind, so he's really keen on audio description as well. So that was kind of the impetus to really get stuck in and do it. So a little bit of theatre in my background, but mostly from the disability side, yeah.
Right. And you've got a live-in critic then?
Yeah, totally. Well, it's like every day is an opportunity for professional development, because we put the audio description on TV or on Netflix, and then we'll be like, oh, I'm not sure I like that description. So we're constantly kind of reviewing audio description. Yeah, it's quite interesting.
That would keep you on your toes. How did you get involved with the Timbray Theatre Company and doing audio described for their shows?
Oh, so they contacted me in 2014, at the end of 2014, asking for quotes for the 2015 shows to audio describe them, which was really exciting. So we've not long since launched the company. Basically, we wanted to take audio description out beyond Auckland Live and offer it to other companies and make it simple for other theatre companies to do, to kind of say, right, here's the package, we've got the equipment, we can do the description, you know, you don't have to worry about all of the technical stuff. So yeah, Timbray company contacted me then, and so we did our first show in 2015, and it's blossomed since then. Timbray Company has done a lot of work building that relationship with Blind Low Vision Education Network New Zealand, Lens, and so that means that lots of young blind people, Timbray is their first theatre experience, and it's wonderful. It's so exciting.
Amazing, amazing. So you mentioned, equipment and technical. So what sort of equipment is involved in audio description?
Oh, I should have brought my equipment. So basically, we use like a tour guide system. So it's lots of just little receivers, little radio frequency receivers. So each blind person who wants the audio description gets a little receiver and a single earpiece. And we have depending on where we're situated. So we either just use a microphone and transmit that if we're somewhere soundproof, and if not, we use a thing called a steno mask, which basically goes over your nose and mouth and stops the noise from coming out, and it's got a little microphone inside. So it's court reporters, the stenographers in the US use them because they use voice recognition software, so they repeat what's going on in the court into their computers. And that's, again, it was Joel Schneider from the US that put us onto that. So basically you can describe anywhere terribly discreetly. We kind of mutter away we mutter away into these masks, and
Oh.
we've got just a little radio transmitter, and then it transmits to the people in the audience. So it's very discreet. Well, that's the plan, at least. It's very discreet.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing. So what does your work day look like? Or what's your preparation on the day? You know, is it like, do you feel like you're doing a performance, or do you have to sort of, you know, calm that tendency to perform down to give a more neutral narration? And what's the preparation before a show?
It is like a performance. So yeah, you get the butterflies like any other performance. So what we do, so there's a bit of a process around doing it, because obviously you don't want the audio description to interfere with the play. And so we do a lot of preparation in advance. So we come and watch the show, we make a video recording of the show, we get the script, and then we would spend somewhere around about 20 to 30 hours writing the script and practicing it. So before we do the actual performance with the paying public, we always get in a blind consultant and a sighted consultant who sit in the theatre as if it's a live performance, at a live performance, and we do a dry run then. And so that's an opportunity to check that it all works, you know, check the technology works, but particularly to check that the script works, that there's nothing that's unclear to the blind person, or there's no, like, really, you know, often there's, and particularly as a play kind of evolves over the course of its run, little nuances kind of creep in that are really nice to say, you know, the relationship between the characters, a little glance there or a cheeky smile there. And so, and often you've missed that from your video because you've videoed the dress rehearsal or something. So we always do that dry run with the blind person to tell us if it makes sense and if the language we've used is clear, and the sighted consultant, who's usually another audio describer, who, you know, tells you if you've missed anything important, if there's any visuals that have changed and that kind of thing. So there's that quality control is pretty important to us. And so we've got a written script for something like a scripted play. We'll have a written script, and then on performance day we come in a bit early. We usually have a touch tour, and actually the Timbray touch tours are great because your stage manager is just wonderful, and you know, they'll guide the blind audience members all around the stage, let them touch the props. They'll often meet the characters, and again, Timbray or theatre company always lets, you know, the characters come out in costume, and we'll hear all their voices, and so they get to know, you know, the audience get to know who they're going to expect, and to distinguish between the voices when they arrive on stage. So that's all part of kind of preparing for the performance. We also do a thing called introductory notes. So we tend to get the blind people seated a little bit early. For the kids shows, they're shorter. For adult shows, they tend to be 15 minutes, and we go into detail in the characters' costume, set and lighting, because we've always done a good touch tour with the kids at somewhere like Timbray Theatre Company. We keep them short and keep them brief for the kids, but it's basically a review of, like, remembering what characters are coming up, the costumes, and what kind of things they can expect, and that, so we transmit that to the earpieces. It's also a little opportunity for them to test that it's working and kind of get tuned into our voices. And then when the show begins, then we read out our script alongside the script of alongside the play. We script it so we're not talking over any other dialogue, because obviously we need them to hear the actors, because that's where the story is. So and that's why I suppose it feels like a performance, because you're trying to keep with the flow of the live performance. You know, when there's a very quiet bit or a sad bit, you want your voice to kind of reflect that. When it's a jolly happy bit, then you're going to lift the pace a bit. And so it's quite an interesting balance, because you don't want to get carried away. It's not for me as the audio describer to be laughing at the jokes, but particularly if there's a visual gag, I want to give it to my audience. You know, I want to describe it in a way that kind of makes it funny enough that they'll laugh at the same time the sighted audience laughs. So it's quite interesting striking that balance of kind of keeping the flow of it. And because if you just do it, you know, and sometimes this is like where we do our critique of the TV, because sometimes the TV audio description can be just delivered in a monotone. You know, it can be like, oh, and the baby penguins died. You know, it's just like, oh, wow, you know, that was a really sad bit. Come on, guys. And obviously it's much easier when you're doing it live, because you are carried emotionally by what you're watching as well. So you try and keep that flow. I remember doing one play, the Duck and the Tulip at Auckland Arts Festival, which is really sad. And in the dry run, I was in tears. So I had to kind of really consciously try not to do that for the audio description, to kind of let yourself be sad, but not actually. Don't get so carried away you can't describe it.
No, not to interfere the work. So there's no doubt many highlights. What's a highlight from that you can recall working with the Timbray shows?
Oh, it's just how excited the kids get, particularly things like, the Santa show, and then the balloons come down, and, it's just wonderful seeing these kids have such a great experience. And like I say, like laughing along at the same time as the rest of the audience and feeling that connection with a theatre production. Mm-hmm. I guess personally, the other really big thing for me with Timbray is that we've got a 5-year-old, and so my partner who's blind comes with our 5-year-old to those shows, and it's so wonderful, seeing blind parents being able to enjoy the theatre with sighted kids and have that experience. So that's really great. I think the other really the thing that makes it feel really worthwhile is all these little kids are like, what shows are on next year? And so just that sense of a new generation growing up expecting that the theatre's for them. I just think that's huge, because the generations, I've got a lot of friends who are blind in their 40s, 50s, 60s who would be dragged along to the theatre with school but never really knew what was going on, and so just this idea that the theatre is for blind people, that it's an art form you can engage with, I think that's massive. It's so huge.
And so what other companies have you worked with? What other such shows?
Quite a lot. We do, so Auckland Live, obviously, they're the ones that kicked it off. We do a lot with Royal New Zealand Ballet these years. They got themselves up and running a few years ago. And I suppose in some ways that was the most surprising one, because I think, particularly that older generation of blind people were like, we've never been to ballet. Why would we go to ballet? It's entirely visual. And actually ballet is probably, for all age groups, is probably one of the most popular shows that we do, which is just amazing. Yeah.
And of course, the music is amazing. Yeah. So it's just visual, but actually ballet has the most sensational and very famous pieces of music.
Yeah. I think even with modern scores, though, we did Hansel and Gretel with a score by Claire Cowan. So it wasn't a score that people were familiar with, but actually there's something really nice about the audio description of ballet, because you have this beautiful music, whether it's a familiar one or a new one, and then the audio describer tells you this beautiful story over the top of it. And so again, and obviously, trying to stay with that emotion of the dancers and the music as well. And so it's, in some ways, I think people enjoy it because it's more relaxing than theatre, because you're not having to concentrate on the dialogue from the stage and the audio description. You can just listen to the music and the audio description. And for some reason it works really well. It's been really popular. We've really enjoyed doing that. But we also work with, as I said, the Auckland Arts Festival. They always try and do a few shows, and they were the ones last year. One of the big highlights last year was the bilingual audio description. So I trained some Māori audio describers in collaboration with Kapo Māori, and so we did a show down at Blends at the Homai campus, Te Kuia me te Pongera Werewera, the Kuia and the Spider. So the performance was in Te Reo Māori, and my colleague James described it in Te Reo Māori for the Māori speaking audience, and I described it in English for the English speaking audience. So that was quite
fantastic.
It was quite a logistical challenge. Really fascinating as well, though, because we thought, because we can write a description and then translate it, and then we're like, actually, no, we can't do that, because the description for the Māori audience, because they understood the dialogue, so their description was literally the description of the visuals, like we would usually do in English for an English speaking production. But the English description had to also kind of progress what was happening in the text for the kids, who hadn't understood the Māori version. So it was interesting kind of seeing that distinction in the descriptions. Our description, I suppose, in English was more like the description we do with opera. We do quite a bit with New Zealand opera. And actually, even if they sing in English, it's quite hard to make out all the words And so the description of opera is not just the visuals, but also is about progressing the story and giving some of the dialogue. So it was a similar exercise to that in some ways.
So every project has to have a different approach. So I imagine for the Timbray, you know that you're speaking to a young audience. So the language you use, the amount you describe something, even though I know you do have, you know, some adult visually impaired coming along, grandparents, parents, but you would have to take that into consideration, I imagine, keeping the description short, the attention span, that, you know, it's a fast moving 1 hour play, and of course very physical, because, you know, children, you know, love vibrant, energetic productions. So you have to take that in consideration, no doubt.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And the words you use will be different. So the approach is different, you know, and so it's going to be different, you know, describing La Bohème to describing Greece. You know, that it's quite a different, you know, the same skills apply, but the kind of language you use, the kind of pacing and stuff are going to be quite different. Yeah, that's what makes it exciting, because you're never quite sure what you're going to come up against.
And what have you got coming up for the rest of the year?
Well, luckily it got busy, because it went very quiet there for a little while, obviously with the lockdown. So next up I'm doing chamber music. I'm doing the chamber music contest in Wellington next week. Then we've got opera. We're doing Semele it's actually at the cathedral, which is going to be so exciting. I can't imagine what that's going to look like, but I'm very excited about it. Mary Poppins is coming up, and then the ballet, we're doing Sleeping Beauty this year, so there's quite a bit coming up, which is pretty nice.
And you'll be doing Greedy Cat for Timbray?
Oh, my colleague Kevin's going to come and do Greedy Cat.
Okay, I know Kevin, yes.
So Kevin has a wonderful way with the kids, and so I quite often let him do the Timbray productions. I try and do one a year. When we're doing, you know, 3 or 4, I try and do one. But Kevin really enjoys doing those, and he's got a really nice way of interacting with the kids. So I often let him do those.
Yes, he has. Wow. Okay, Nicola, thank you. That's been really fascinating. I've learned so much, because I haven't had the privilege of hearing Kevin or yourself in action, and it's been really enlightening into how you're able to bring that live theatre to our blind audience. So thank you so much for what you do. It's an important aspect of Timbray Theatre Company to allow access to live performances for those with disabilities in the community, and your professionalism, your company allow us to do that. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you very much. We always really enjoy working with Timbray Theatre Company. It's it's a really happy place to work at, and it's just wonderful seeing the responses of the children. They just love it so much. So long may it continue.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for joining me today, Nicola.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye bye.